troops. You know, I mean, we're talking about countries that, you know, that are relatively poor. I mean, do we need all these troops in Afghanistan? Do we need to have all these troops in Iraq? I mean, they weren't really that much of a threat. To the extent that they have an installation that we think is developing nuclear weapons, we can demand that they let us inspect it. If they don't let us inspect it, we just blow it up. But that's it. We don't have to go in there. We don't need all this. We have the best weapons. These guys, you know, in Afghanistan, they're riding around on camels. I mean, what difference does it make? I think we can protect ourselves, and I think in many cases we stir up more hornets' nests than you know, by being involved in too many places. Just protect American interests, protect Americans in the United States, protect Americans abroad. And you know, I think we can do it for less money than we're spending right now. But that is what the federal government is supposed to do. That's why we have a federal government. That's the only reason the Founding Fathers gave the federal government the power to tax, was because of a wartime. So let the government defend the country and let us take care of everything else, because we don't need them for anything else. But as far as the social issues, now most of these social issues are not federal issues. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the federal government has any say in how a marriage is defined, or you know, whether or not, you know, a woman can have an abortion or not. None of that has to do with the federal government. Those are all individuals powers that were reserved for the state. So it's up to Hartford to decide here, you know, what is Connecticut's policy on marriage? What is Connecticut's policy on abortion? That's a state issue. I'm not running for a state office. If I were, personally, I'd be pro-choice on the abortion issue. I would be, you know, I'm content with gay marriage. I mean, I'm you know, fine on those things. I'm relatively liberal when it comes to these social issues. But as a senator, they're none of my business. Right? So if, you know, I'm not going to vote on anything. So, you know, because it's not part of what a senator is supposed to do. It's not what a federal representative or the president is supposed to do. It has nothing to do with the federal government.
You mentioned blowing up Iran if they wouldn't stop developing nuclear.
Well, not the whole country, just the facility.
How do you feel about us doing things in foreign countries as opposed to doing it with UN back?
Well, I mean, a lot of times, every time we do things, we go and we try to get permission from the United Nations to do stuff. I mean, I don't think the U.S. should try to, you know, be beholden to the United Nations. I think that, you know, if there's something that we think is in our interest, you know, we should be able to do it, and we shouldn't have to get permission. But the problem is, we owe so much money to so many people. We kind of need permission now because we're in debt to everybody. You know, if we don't get China to say you can do this, if we don't get Japan, we're screwed, because they're our bankers. They're the ones that are loaning us all the money. And until we're independent of that, you know, that's why the most important thing that we can do for our military is get our economic house in order. I mean, the Soviet Union collapsed. They had a huge military, but they collapsed because their economy collapsed. The same thing can happen in the United States. It doesn't, and part of the reason that our economy is collapsing is because we can't afford this huge military. And that's only part of it. So we have to become self-sufficient. We have to stop running deficits so we can fund our own army. Right now, we can't go anywhere unless the Chinese loan us the money to do it. Otherwise, we can't afford it. We can't supply the troops. We can't give gasoline to the troops unless we, you know. So we are in a very vulnerable position. So unless we get everybody to okay us, we can't do anything.
You know, why do you think the younger generation has a better understanding of your message?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's, they certainly have seen me on the internet. I mean, they're more likely to get their news by surfing the internet. And so when you surf the internet now and you put in certain keywords, you're just going to get me a lot. And so I think they've been exposed to that. But I think, you know, the younger people understand that, you know, this is their country. These are their debts. You know, and they're looking at these things and they're saying, how can I, you know, how am I going to be able to survive? Because look at where the taxes are right now. Look at how much higher we're expecting. Right now, Social Security payroll taxes are about 15%, 16%. These young high school kids here, by the time they work, those taxes can be 25%. You know, they're coming into this Ponzi scheme real late, and it's very expensive. And how much higher the income taxes are going to be, and what kind of jobs are going to be available. I mean, they're more concerned about their future. And the one thing that we have to be concerned about is that they can leave. There's nobody holding them back. There are other countries out there. There are other countries that are lowering taxes, that are cutting regulations, that they can go to. Our country was formed by immigrants. People came here because they fled countries that were doing what we're doing now in search of better opportunity, and they found it here. And we don't want to chase our children out of this country with regulation and taxes when other countries are cutting them. Because that's what they can do. That's a choice. So I think they understand that. I think people don't want to have to move to another country. They like to be able to stay in the United States, but they're frightened, and they're afraid of what we're doing to this country. And so, they're figuring out. But I think, older people, they'll get the message too. And ultimately, I think there are people who are even collecting Social Security now that will understand my message, because they don't want to bankrupt their kids so they can collect a Social Security check. And they realize too that if inflation destroys the value of that Social Security check, what good is it? It doesn't matter that you're getting a check if you can't buy anything with it.
Excuse me, I think we have to go pretty soon. The lights are out, so we're going to have to finish up our meeting.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for the time.